We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
An extraordinary guy. He helped bring EasyJet, which is the #1 airline in Europe, to Britain. He was the #3 guy at EasyJet. Remarkable history in the aviation business, and I'm so honored to have him with us. Patrick Weill, everybody. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Mark. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you
Good to
so
see
very
you.
much. What a life you've had, sir, and you continue to have. We're so anxious to get first, before we get to some of your background, which is really fascinating, to some of the stuff that is going on here. I mean, you've seen the aviation business because you really helped establish the business of EasyJet and the business of aviation across Europe and in this country as well, so active. You've seen that business evolve. And I'm wondering, just as an overall first question, and then we can get into some specifics, if you've seen the business part of things, the dollar and cents part of things, now begin to outpace safety and production elements that are critical to sustaining safe aviation.
An exploding dimension right now, right after COVID. So the airline industry obviously was shrunk, and a lot of airplanes were parked in the desert and so forth. So being all that said, now everybody wants to travel, get out in the world, and the airlines are in I wouldn't say a panic, but they want to replace the business travel they lost during COVID. So a lot of emphasis has been put on leisure travel, and a lot of new markets and airplanes are now in places where they wouldn't normally have been previously, especially Southwest Airlines is in a lot of cities that normally they wouldn't have gone to, like Palm Springs or Montana, Bozeman, Montana, things like that, or Santa Barbara, for instance. So there's been this huge influx of leisure travel, and that has exponentially put a lot of pressure on the industry to, hire pilots and mechanics and those kind of functions that need to facilitate the airline's operation.
There have been revelations, Patrick Weill, that the process of building these planes is so flawed that there are literally parts being left out, new parts, and are being used in planes that are actually old parts that were discarded. This is what the whistleblower report indicated, that there is essentially, it's beyond incompetence. It's almost a deliberate effort to just catch up with production, I guess, is what I would ask you. Is it that, or is it what's going on at Boeing? It seems like
It's
manifest
an easy
malfeasance.
explanation, actually, the manufacturers, Boeing in particular, decided to divest itself from Seattle because of union issues, and they outsourced the production of the fuselages for 737s in particular to a company called Spirit Aerosystems in Wichita, Kansas. And the factory basically was the Boeing factory in Wichita. And they basically just outsourced the production of that to minimize the workforce in Seattle, to put the final assembly department of Boeing, to again bust the union, I believe, in my heart, because I think that's where it all began. And then the failure of Boeing to create another mid-sized jet to replace the 757 was one of the primary drivers. And that created the MAX 8. And the problem with the MAX 8 is that the engines were so large on it that it created an imbalance in the weight of the center of gravity of the aircraft, which required to off that. And that's where the problems with the MAX 8 became apparent, was that the airplane would try to fly itself as opposed to letting the pilots fly it. And that's what created the accidents, the first two. And then I had thought that perhaps after all that they would have cleaned up their act, and apparently they haven't.
Well, as you say, that problem, the physics of that then was played out with the loss of those two planes and the loss of those beautiful souls, all of whom died. You would have thought that would have brought something about in this Boeing world that would have changed things, but it's actually just now one more thing that has been added to a long list of stuff that's going on at Boeing. In this blown door case, there is the Boeing Max. Thank you for that engine comparison. You can see it there. They move that. It's just a slight move, right, Patrick Weill, but it's enough.
Yeah, it creates this imbalance basically right at the a little bit forward of the wing there. So the airplane can fly fine. It's just that it needs the computer to fly by wire, if you will, balance that CG of the airplane out. And when it's heavy or it's taking off or going to altitude, that's usually where the problems of trimming the aircraft come into play. So that's pretty much what was the problem in the programming of the computer system that was on the aircraft. Was in conflict with the pilot's inputs to the aircraft. So that was, and if you're flying an airplane, it just starts to do its own thing, and you have very little time to figure out how to fix it or correct it.
And now the blown door.
Yeah,
they're doing an investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board is on that blown door that flew off the Alaska Airlines flight. It was in a 737 MAX 9 jet. It was mid-flight when it happened.
Yep.
And it appeared to be missing 4 key bolts. So they're looking back at the assembly process, and they are hearing that key bolts are left out. They're seeing that key bolts are left out, and they're looking for documents that are related to the removal of this key part during production. Now, Boeing is saying, we don't have any documents. We can't find them. It's feeling, Patrick. I'm not asking you to, to adjudicate this in this moment, but it sure smells bad.
Well, yeah. If there's smoke, there's usually fire, of course. And what puzzles me in particular is that this didn't happen earlier with the same aircraft. So I was surprised that it's a new aircraft. I think it had been about 2 or 3 months in service. But I was kind of shocked now how that all came about, because if the bolts were missing, then as soon as the aircraft pressurized, that door would pop right out. And that's usually where this happened. This happened around 16,000 feet. So the airplane was pressurizing for a higher altitude. And that perhaps left a gap wide enough at that point still to pop right out of the airplane, which is, again, astounding, the fact that they did not have bolts to hold that door in place, because that door is a non-operative door. It's designed. So in Europe, they have different regulations for evacuation, and that's the reason that door was created at all, was to satisfy European regulators, and it had really nothing to do with the U.S. operation of the aircraft. So it was deemed unnecessary. However, when airplanes sell an aircraft after its lease, it may go to Europe or may go to a third country somewhere, and that regulation may exist for whatever that reason would be.
Oh, that's interesting. I never even thought of that. That's an interesting change in things. And, into this mix comes a whistleblower, right? And the whistleblower has every manner of damning evidence against Boeing. Used to work at Boeing. He says that under pressure, workers have been deliberately fitting substandard parts to the aircraft on the production line. This is what I was mentioning kind of when we were first starting this conversation. He said that soon after starting work in South Carolina, he'd become concerned that the push to get new aircraft built meant that the assembly process was rushed and safety was compromised. Now, Boeing denies this, but he said that workers had failed to follow procedures that were intended to track components through the factory, and that allowed these defective components to go missing, and that in some cases, substandard parts had been removed from scrap bins and fitted to planes that were being built to prevent delays on the production line. All right, this guy, and it goes on and on and on. The emergency oxygen systems didn't work with a failure rate of 25%. So that, again, means 1 in 4 people on board that plane won't have oxygen should they need it in real life. And he'd alerted managers to his concerns. No action was taken. So finally, he became a whistleblower. Now, what happened to him? he's found dead. He apparently took his own life. John Barnett had worked for Boeing for 32 years until his retirement in 2017, and he'd been giving all this evidence in this whistleblower lawsuit against Boeing. All of a sudden, he's dead from a self-inflicted wound. This just happened this week.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, just a couple days ago. Yeah.
Exactly. So this 62-year-old man who was trying to, I mean, again, as I see it, make a difference, right a lot of wrongs, who had worked, as I say, for 32 years for Boeing, he all of a sudden takes his own life right as this suit is coming forward.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's quite ominous. I mean, now something like this happens here, nobody else may want to even come forward because, the fear of not coming home for dinner kind of thing.
Maybe
I can't really opine on it. The only thing I can say is that the major manufacturer, Airbus too, as well. Boeing and Airbus are pretty much the one and twos left in the manufacturing world. But 90% of the parts of the aircraft are outsourced. And their production rates are dependent on that supply chain still coming through. So that could be part of the problem.
Yeah. No, I get it. Right. It's not, and that's one of the things that you mentioned that in a way, this process of putting the plane together involves several different locations, and it's not just one production line. So it is all different. Has the effect of all of this news out of Boeing aircraft?
Did you see that?
What was that?
Did you see the picture I sent you with the 737 barrels that went over the side of the hill in Montana?
Tony, do you have that? Tony's got all of our stuff.
Yeah, I sent that to you, but there was at least a half a dozen of the 737s that wound up in the riverbed from a train derailment. So my guess, and I haven't been able to follow that completely, is some of those airplanes were picked up, salvaged, and put back into being manufactured. So there's a real... Yeah,
there they are. Yeah.
Yep. I think there was three more that came off that train that was shipped, and it was a shipment between Wichita, Kansas, where the barrels of the airplanes are being manufactured. And that's Spirit Aerosystems, which is a third party, supplier to Boeing. But originally it was a Boeing directly, supervised factory. I suspect the biggest problem is hiring a lot of the folks that work on these airplanes. There's probably some inconsistencies, and then the training, and then the inspection of the final product. Because every airplane that's built does have a qualified inspector that certifies that this is what we're doing. It's good to go.
It seems like a lot of people will be on the hook here, and yet I don't know what's happening at Boeing. It doesn't feel as though anything really big is happening. But again, I think this is an ongoing story. I want to just ask you in the last couple of minutes, because you're such an interesting guy. You were born in California, and then you went into this aviation world, and you got, you started at the bottom. I mean, you weren't like hooked up with the aviation world, and yet you ended up at CEO level positions.
Toilets on the Air California at Burbank Airport, as a matter of fact.
And the toilets were never cleaner, Patrick Weill. And then
they were pretty clean. Actually, during COVID, the airlines did a good job of keeping them clean. I wish they would go back to that policy. I think the airplanes were really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And
then I did every job in the industry after that. Basically, I was in charge of catering, and then I was in charge of the ground crews, and then I eventually worked my way inside the terminal and worked at the ticket counter, and then the gates, and wound up being the manager, and then from there I wound up in the corporate office and sort of found my way. I never fixed them or flew them, but I knew a little bit about everything. That's what you need to be a CEO of an airline.
It was really an impressive rise, and you're going to be a featured.
I wish there was better money in it, but we're working on that too. Yeah.
You'll be a featured speaker. You missed the big money. It's now just hit. I'll be a featured speaker, you say, at the Airline CEO Conference in Calgary in May. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And then I know
Yeah.
that now
they invite me to speak every year. It's been a couple of sessions now, but because of the relationships I've built with some of these former CEOs like Bob Crandall and David Neeleman, the creator of JetBlue. And they are very supportive of. I'm working on creating a TV series about the history of the airline industry. That's never been done before, and people really, it really is a full expose of everything that goes on behind the scenes in the airlines. I mean, we were talking about the tire falling off the United jet. Well, 90% of airplanes that come to the gate get their tires changed right there at the gate. They jack them up, they pull in a tire, take it off. And what I suspect happened there is that the tire was changed at its previous flight because it would have fell off during the previous flight. And, lo and behold, somebody didn't put the rivets back in the wheel. And that's exactly probably what happened. My take on that is that United probably needs to stop all their maintenance activities for a moment and investigate every department in the maintenance area, because something is falling through the cracks, especially there. And they had 5 incidents in 5-6 days. One was probably a pilot issue, but a lot of it was mechanical, engine flameouts, and they get blamed. Oh, there was styrofoam or something that got in the engine and caused a fire. I don't think so. It would be something much more substantial than that. A bird, a big bird would probably cause a problem like that. That's what happened in the Hudson.
It's interesting, though, that they always come out with a story that's BS. And we have no background in aviation. And even on this show, we go, no, we know that's not what happened. But they always serve up some BS initially. But what a distinguished history you've had. That's the car that was hit by the tire that fell off of that jet. Isn't that right, Tony? I think that's what that is.
Sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, especially when
when it comes to aviation.
Lucky
you've done a whole lot.
Somebody that would,
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's amazing. And you were asking me about EasyJet. I hope you have time for that. So
quickly, because we only have another minute. So
in the dawn of the internet, a little airline I was involved with starting was called the Florida Shuttle, and we were the first airline in the world to use the internet as a way to distribute tickets and sell them. And because of that, it got attention from a gentleman named Stelios Sonaju, who is the chairman of the board of EasyJet, and he sent some tickets over for us to consult them. And that's where it all started with EasyJet. And they followed our business plan right down to the letter. And they how successful they are.
Wow. Here's one for you. In and out employees got paid more than those workers for aircraft maintenance.
It was leading edge technology.
It's interesting. Do you think that compensation is a problem? People are suggesting that they don't pay those maintenance employees enough or whatever. Do you think that was a problem here, or is it just a shoddy workmanship, or
I think
pride of ownership over the work you do?
I mean, a lot of these jobs are union or not, and they're trying more and more to send the work out to Costa Rica or some third country where there's no union issues, and it happens all the time in the industry. And the problem, I think, is that there's not enough maintenance inspectors to verify the work that's being performed, and that's a big part of it. I can't really opine on Boeing's specific problems because it's above my pay grade, I guess.
Well, it's also, I think it's super complicated, but you've kind of hinted at a few things here. So I love that. I hope you'll come back and visit us. I mean, we'd love to. Clearly, the aviation world is getting beset by more and more problems. So it'd be really great to have you join us again. And you've been very generous. I know you're out there with the History of Aviation show. I wish you the best with that, because that seems like a really solid television experience,
Well, we have attached William Shatner as the host, and he's 93 years old. But we also have some other interesting folks we're trying to chat with right now. John Travolta is one of them, and Dennis
that's
Quaid for
terrific.
another. So, yeah.
There it is, Airlines of the World,
Airlines
hosted by William
of the World
Shatner.
is the show. And we just we're trying to sell it. It's a hard sell because it's never been done before. But with William Shatner, we think we have the right person in front of the camera for that.
Well, he'll definitely get you a meeting. So, all right, Patrick Weill, thank you. Come join us again, will you please?
I will indeed. Thanks,
all right,
Mark.
Patrick Weill, everybody.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.